Well, hello, fellow book lovers. My name is Roger, and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So this is part 2 of some of the favorite books that I read in January and February. So I guess this could be my January and February wrap-up. So the first book I want to talk about is another novel written by Silvera entitled They Both Die at the End. Now, They Both Die at the End is one of the most amazing books I've read this year. Now, I knew from the title that the book was probably going to hurt my heart a bit, and it did. This is a book that will bring tears to your eyes, but the ride is so worth it. So imagine, if you will, a world in the not-so-distant future in which everybody knows the day that they're going to die. There's an agency called Deathcast, and they are charged with telephoning everybody who is going to die within the next 24 hours. The calls are made between midnight and 3 a.m., and the recipients are not given any details except that they are encouraged to live their last day the best they can. So such is the setting for They Both Die at the End. So shortly after midnight, two teens, Mateo and Rufus, each received the dreaded Deathcast phone call, telling them that within the next 24 hours, their life is going to come to an end. What follows is how they decide to live their last day on Earth. Now, there is an app called the Last Friend app, in which Deckers, which is the name given to those people who've received the Deathcast call, I don't know if it has something to do with hitting the deck or what. So the Last Friend app is so that Deckers can find each other, and if they so choose, opt to spend their last day together. Though Mateo and Rufus do have loved ones that they could spend their last day with, outside circumstances intervene to keep them apart. So instead they reach out to each other via the app. Once they meet in person, they make the decision to spend their last hours with each other and to help each other to face their fears and to say goodbye. Now, as the two get to know each other, we learn more about their past and what brought them to this particular place in their lives. Now, what I loved most about these two characters is how they each brought out the best in the other, and how they supported each other when situations and emotions became challenging. So the story isn't simply a day in the life of two Deckers. Rather, it's a sort of progression as each boy learns to truly savor life, perhaps for the first time ever. And in the process, these two come together in a most beautiful way. Now, regardless of the title, this isn't the story of how two boys die, but rather about how they live once they find each other. So, in this way, it's not about dying, but rather about living. And in so doing, these two boys experience a profound connection to the world around them and to each other. Yes, this book is definitely heartbreaking in places, and you'll most likely tear up, if not ugly cry, in several places throughout the book. I think, though, that this is one of those life-changing stories that after reading it can make you view the world differently. It is a haunting book, and will stay with you for a while. You know, it's been a couple of weeks, actually, since I've read it, and I still probably have thought about it every day since then. Now, I think that the premise of this story was brilliant. The creative and original character-driven plot kept me interested through each step of the way. So after the last two novels that I've read by Silvera, this author is definitely on my Insta-buy list from this point forward. I really love this book, and I love this author. And this was definitely a 5-star read for me. So the next book I want to talk about that I read in February, I think, is entitled Autoboyography, written by Christina, which I think is actually a pen name of a couple of authors writing together. Now, I went into this book totally blind. I had no idea what it was about. It was actually the monthly read for one of our Goodreads groups. So this story follows our main character, Tanner, an 18-year-old, half-Jewish, bisexual high school student who moves to Provo, Utah with his parents. Now, he is openly out to his parents, who are entirely comfortable with Tanner's sexuality. However, given that they live in a town where the majority of people are Mormons, they've asked Tanner to be especially careful whom he comes out to. Now, Tanner, at the urging of his best friend Autumn, signs up for this class entitled The Seminar, which is a popular and highly coveted course in which students write an entire novel under the supervision of a teacher and a teaching assistant. This course is very hard to get into, but Tanner and his friend Autumn were both chosen and were both allowed to sign up for the course. So the TA for this course is none other than a strikingly good-looking Sebastian Brother. I forgot his name there for a second, but I wrote it down. Sebastian Brother, a gifted author who himself took the class the year prior, I think. So but from the moment Sebastian walks into the course, Tanner feels a connection with him. There's like a buzz of electricity between them. Now, Tanner cannot deny his attraction for Sebastian, and in spite of his better judgment, finds himself falling for the boy whom he considers to be the most untouchable person in Provo, given that Sebastian is not only a Mormon, but he's also the bishop's son. But, to Tanner's surprise, he discovers that his feelings for Sebastian are reciprocated. Now, knowing the Mormon Church's stance on homosexuality, Tanner's parents are afraid that he's going to end up getting hurt, and they try to convince him that pursuing the bishop's son cannot lead to a happy ending. Now, though Tanner is well aware of the probable outcome of his feelings for Sebastian, and he knows he'd be better off not pursuing the man, his heart isn't so easily convinced. Now, as for Sebastian, it's no surprise that he's heavily involved with his church, but he's also trying to come to terms with his sexuality, specifically his attraction to males, something he's more or less denied up to this point. And Sebastian, well, he's having a difficult time balancing his emerging feelings for Tanner against his obligations to the church, his parents, and the community. And this creates even more turmoil and conflict for him. Now, what really worked for me in this novel was the respectful portrayal, at least as I saw it, of the Mormon Church. Many stories that portray LGBTQ characters struggle with religion tend to demonize the church and all of its members in the process. Now, I found it refreshing in this book that this story depicted the LDS church members as friendly, loving, helpful, and positive people with a significant focus on service to others and service to the community. So in this way, the author does an excellent job of balancing the positives of the church with the divisive ways in which religion in certain situations can come between family members. Now, I felt that this is really a relevant book that deals with issues that many LGBTQ teens are facing today, and gave a very realistic portrayal of what many teens go through while trying to figure themselves out and find their place in the world. So in this way, I feel that this is an important book. So Autobiography, I felt, was a beautiful and emotional read with an encouraging ending that I felt complete and that felt satisfying to me. And I ended up giving this book, I think, 4 or 5 stars. Now, the next book. So I'm really a sucker for a ghost story. So I recently read a book entitled Anna Dressed in Blood, written by Kendare Blake. Kendare Blake. Kendare. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'll say Kendare. So anyway, this Anna Dressed in Blood is quite different from the standard ghost story that you typically read. So the story revolves around our hero, Cass Lowood, a loner teenager who kills ghosts with his deadly ghost hunting knife. Now, Cass doesn't kill every ghost he comes across. He only kills the ones who harm people. Now, we learn that he inherited his profession, his ghost hunting profession, and his knife from his father, who was killed under mysterious circumstances by an especially nasty and powerful ghost. Now, Cass works on building up his ghost hunting skills, and once they're good enough, he plans on avenging his father's death by pursuing and destroying the ghost that murdered his father. So, since his father's murder, Cass and his mother travel the country following rumors of murderous ghosts. And Cass makes a point of never making friends or connections in the cities that they go to because he knows that he never stays long in one place. There's always a new ghost or to hunt in a new city. So following a local legend about an especially vicious ghost named Anna, Cass and his mom end up in Thunder Bay. Now, Anna was supposedly brutally murdered in 1958, and since then, numerous disappearances have been blamed on her. But Anna is not like any other ghost that Cass has ever encountered before. She is extremely powerful, tormented, and full of rage. And she also wears the same dress that she wore the day she was murdered, stained red with blood. Hence her nickname, Anna Drenched in Blood. Anna also kills anybody who dares to enter her old Victorian homestead by tearing her victims apart. So parts of this book were rather frightening and bloody at times. Anna is definitely one scary gal. She's also the most fearsome ghost that Cass has ever encountered up to this point. But there is more to Anna than meets the eye. Now, this story is told from Cass's point of view, and he's actually a great narrator. I loved his character. He's cocky, self-assured, and definitely brave. But he also had this sensitive side to him as well, which made him quite a likable character. Now, I felt that the author did an excellent job of portraying what it is that makes our protagonist tick. And his deadpan humor really added a nice touch, I thought. I also loved how his character evolved from being a closed-off loner to a more open and caring person with actual friends. So Anna Dressed in Blood is a suspenseful, well-told, compelling tale with an unexpected twist at the end. The ending and plot were not predictable, at least I didn't think so, and were refreshingly original. This book was definitely another favorite read of mine for 2018. Now, I was also happy to learn after I read this book that there was a sequel entitled The Girl of Nightmares, which I also had to run out and get. And I also read it, too. It's kind of difficult for me to talk about this book too much without giving anything away from the first book. Let me just say that The Girl of Nightmares begins several months after a massive battle that took place at the end of Anna Dressed in Blood. And Cass, Thomas, and Carmel, the characters in the first book, are still dealing with the fallout. So Cass is kind of having a hard time of it and keeps seeing what he believes are hallucinations. He finally figures out that they are not hallucinations but real, and that someone he loves, who is no longer with us, is trapped in a terrible place and is suffering horribly. And only Cass can set them free. So this is perhaps the most dangerous situation that Cass has ever gotten involved with thus far. And from what he's been told, moving forward with this venture will result in a terrible price. And as you know, there is always a terrible price. So everyone tells him that he needs to let it go. He needs to walk away, but he can't do it. But as he soon discovers, he can't take on this rescue mission alone. He needs the help of a creepy and somewhat cultish order, esoteric order, who may not have Cass's best interests at heart. In fact, some of the order's members may be well served by and are hoping for his death. So this is where the story really heats up, as there is a desperate race for time, and Cass has no choice but to put his trust in the order. So if he doesn't manage to find and rescue the person within the allotted amount of time, he will die. And if he does manage to rescue the person and bring them back, there's a very good chance that the order will try to kill them. But Cass is determined, so he goes deeper and deeper into the darkness than he's ever gone before. So the first book, Anna Dressed in Blood, was a complete novel in and of itself. And the ending seemed wrapped up and final to me. So I was a little bit surprised that this book, The Girl of Nightmares, was actually the continuation of the first book. An amazing sequel to a powerful first book which completely sucked me in. Now, there are plenty of surprises in this story as we learn more about Cass's father, Gideon's history, the history of Cass's ghost hunting knife, the athame, and the old order, which ties them all together. So The Girl of Nightmares was eerie, fast-paced, gripping, and suspenseful, with vivid, believable characters and entertaining dialogue. I felt that Cass's story was nicely wrapped up at the end of this book with a satisfying, though somewhat bittersweet conclusion. Now, that being said, the story felt resolved to me, and though I suppose it's possible there could be another book, one hasn't been written yet as far as I know. But if so, I would definitely rush out together, because Miss Blake is now on one of my favorite authors lists. So the next book that I want to talk about is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Now, first of all, I have a horrible confession to make. I have never read a John Green book. Not one, which is kind of strange considering that I enjoy contemporary young adult books and I faithfully watch John and Hank Green's weekly Vlog Brothers videos for several years now. I even own a copy of The Fault in Our Stars, I think. Yeah, it's right here. Fault in Our Stars, but I haven't yet read it. So that will be next on my list. But since Turtles All the Way Down is his most recent work, I decided to start with that one first. So the story starts out when Russell Prickett, a billionaire, goes missing just before his arrest. And there's a $100,000 reward out for information leading to his arrest. Now, our main character, Ozza, and her best friend, Daisy, search for clues about his disappearance, hoping to collect the reward money. Now, as it turns out, Ozza and the billionaire's son, Davis, were actually at summer camp together years ago, which they named Sad Camp because it was a camp for children who lost one of their parents. So once Ozza and Daisy stumble onto the Pickett property snooping around for clues, they get caught by security and are taken to the billionaire's son, resulting in Ozza inadvertently rekindling her relationship with Davis. Now, Davis and his little brother Noah are Pickett's, the billionaire's two children, who are now left to fend for themselves, supervised only by paid house employees while authorities are searching for their fugitive father. Now, Davis figures out what Ozza is up to and pleads with her not to search for his father. He does not want to put his little brother Noah, who is only 13, if I remember correctly, through the agony of seeing their father get arrested and the subsequent media circus that would be bound to follow. So as I'm reading along, I notice that not all that much is really happening in regards to the search for Russell Pickett. Ozza and Daisy seem to have given up their investigation, and there's not really a lot of other action going on relating to the billionaire's disappearance. I'm just wondering, what the hell? That's when it hit me. Now, Turtles All the Way Down is really not about the mystery of a fugitive billionaire. It's about something completely different. The book had very little to do with what's going on in the physical reality, but rather it's about what's going on in Ozza's mind. So in this way, rather than a mystery, the novel is instead a powerful story about mental illness. So the story is told from Ozza's first-person point of view, who suffers from OCD, in which manifests for her as these thought spirals which grip her and refuse to let go. That is to say, once she grasps onto a thought, she cannot pull herself back up from it no matter how hard she tries. It just pulls her deeper and deeper and deeper. She just goes more and more and more. In this way, she's kind of trapped in her own mind. So, considering this, the disappearance of the billionaire is really secondary to the working of Ozza's mind in this story and how the OCD affects her relationship with Davis, with her mother, and with her friend Daisy. And the story is really heartbreaking at times as Ozza struggles with her desire to be a good daughter, a friend, and girlfriend, but her mind simply doesn't allow her to do so. So it's not surprising that this all leads to significant self-confidence issues and depression on Ozza's part, as she fears that she's making everybody around her miserable. So through Ozo, we gain insight into what it might be like to live with constant runaway, intrusive thoughts like this, and how difficult it is, or it would be, to keep a grasp on reality. Now, for me, the story provided an eye-opening and really raw portrayal of what the struggle might be like, a struggle that others around you might not understand. Though it dealt with serious subject matter, the book was also light, humorous, and laugh-out-loud funny in places. I thought Green did an excellent job of balancing the seriousness of the book's theme with the playfulness and lightheartedness, and in so doing, couldn't help but fall in love with the characters in this book. Overall, a brilliant story and another excellent book for me, and I look forward to reading more of Mr. Green's work. With The Fault in Our Stars probably will be the next one. So another book I'd like to mention is one entitled Being Henry David, written by Cal Armistead. Now, I stumbled across this book on a booktuber's blog. Actually, Peter Likes Books. Hey, Peter. And the concept sounded really intriguing, so I picked it up and I ended up loving it. So the story begins with a teenage boy finds himself in Penn Station in New York with a nasty bump on his head and no recollection of who he is. His only possession is a beat-up copy of Walden, paperback copy of Walden by Henry David Thoreau. So shortly thereafter, he comes in contact with two homeless kids. And when they ask his name, he tells them that it's Henry David, which they then shorten to Hank. At this point, he wasn't comfortable about telling anybody that he had amnesia. I'm not sure whether he could trust anybody. So, of course, we wonder right from the beginning, what could have happened to him to have caused his injuries and his amnesia? So after a dangerous encounter with a drug dealer, Hank is on the run and ends up in Concord, Massachusetts, where he heads almost immediately to Walden Pond, embarking on almost a literal search for his identity. One of Hank's biggest fears through all of this is the fear that he might be a monster, a terrible person who's done horrible things to others. So because of this, he attempts to keep the new people in his life at arm's length, not really daring to let anybody get too close to him. This is a lot more difficult than it seems, however, as the new people slowly become integrated into his life and into his heart. So bit by bit, the pieces begin to return as snapshots of information flash in his mind. But it's not all smooth sailing for Hank, especially when particularly painful memories begin to resurface. So this leads Hank to make some extremely rash decisions that are not particularly in his best interest. Now, I thought that the author did an excellent job of capturing the voice of this troubled, scared teenage boy who slowly recalls the events that led up to his memory loss. The story finishes on a positive note with a resolved and satisfying ending. At least I thought so. So even if you're not interested in Thoreau per se, there's a lot going on in this story to enjoy, and you just might feel a desire to read some of his work by the end of this book. After I turned the last page, I actually couldn't help but wander over to my bookshelves and search for my old copy of Walden. Now, from what I understand, this is a debut novel for this author, and I personally can't wait to see what he'll come up with next. So the last book that I'm going to talk about in this wrap-up is a book entitled Goodnight Boy by Nikki Sheehan. Now, I was browsing the young adult section at my local library when this book caught my eye. Now, I knew nothing about it going in, but the description and the back cover kind of caught my interest, so I decided to check it out. So the entire story takes place, it's kind of an odd story. It takes place in a kennel where a teenage boy named JC and his dog, Boy, have been locked up by his stepfather. The entire story revolves around JC's storytelling as he recounts his life story to his dog, Boy. I love the name of the dog, Boy. It always makes you think of people talking to the dogs. Who's a good boy? So anyway, we learn bit by bit that JC is an immigrant boy from Haiti who has gone through one horrendous experience after another. Abuse at orphanages, surviving an earthquake, living on the streets, just to name a few of them. And we learn through JC's dialogue what a tough, resilient, and brave kid he really is. And it's these qualities that have allowed him to overcome those difficulties that he's had to face up to this point. So JC tells Boy about how he ended up in the United States with Melanie and her boyfriend or husband. I don't know. I don't believe that their marital status was ever mentioned in the book. So anyway, he tells about how they ended up in the United States with him, how he ended up being adopted by Melody and the husband or boyfriend. So JC actually depicts Melanie in a positive light, and we can tell from the dialogue that he's actually quite fond of her. But not so much with the stepfather, however. Through JC's dialogue, we get the impression that the stepfather, for some reason, resented the boy and made everyday life for him kind of difficult because of that resentment. So we eventually learn the reason that JC and Boy ended up in their current predicament. According to the JC, he did a bad thing that upset his stepfather so much that he locked JC and Boy away in the kennel. And we do end up finding out what that bad thing is, by the way. So during this time, Melanie is away, so she's unaware of what's going on at home. So as the days go by in the kennel, JC's stepfather visits less and less frequently, meaning less and less food and less water. And JC realizes that somehow he has to get him and Boy to freedom, as their very life may depend on it. Now, though the reader experiences a roller coaster of emotions as we move through this story, it's also a hopeful story. So no matter what horrors JC experiences, he never seems to get depressed or wallow in self-pity or despair. It's also interesting to note that there was almost no dialogue throughout the entire story. All of it was portrayed through JC's thoughts and one-way discourse to Boy. So in this way, the author did an amazing job of portraying JC's excellent character voice. Now, the lack of two-way dialogue didn't mean that the book was difficult to read. On the contrary, the author's clever use of white space, it's like some of the pages only contained a couple of sentences, made the book not only readable, but added an extra intrigue and emotion that kept you turning the page. So though it was heartbreaking in places, Goodnight Boy is a beautiful, moving, and hopeful story of an abused boy, his dog, and their journey toward freedom. Now, I would give a trigger warning with this book as it contains scenes of child and animal abuse and neglect. So this concludes part 2 of my January and February wrap-up of some of my favorite books. There's several more books that I've read that I haven't mentioned. So maybe I'll do another video, or maybe I'll do individual book reviews of them. Although it doesn't seem that individual book reviews are all that popular on BookTube. How about you? Do you like to watch book review videos, or do you prefer the wrap-up format? Curious minds want to know. So that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you liked this video, it'd be great if you give it an old thumbs up. So until next time, thanks for watching and bye.